Welcome to Retro Rewind, and as the first installment of Retro Rewind, I thought I would take you on a blast from the past and talk about my video game beginnings. So I'm going to talk to you about how I got into video games. Like, I started getting into video games at a very young age. But what I'm going to talk about is my very first memory. Now, I know my family grew up having an Atari 2600 because my parents got it as a wedding present. So we had one growing up, and I remember playing those. But I'm going to talk about my first real experience that I remember. I had to be 4 or 5. I was living in Linwood at the time, and I went with my sisters, and I ended up going to her friend Trisha's house, and they were playing Mario. I'd never seen anything like it before. They were playing Super Mario Brothers, and it looked like a whole different world. It opened up my mind to other things. The first time I ever was like, wow. Because I only saw stuff like that in cartoons when I was that age. Now, while Mario was the first game I saw, it was not the first game I played. So, we went over there day after day after day. And then one day, she put in Zelda. And I tried Zelda. And Legend of Zelda. The music, the song, the gameplay, everything. Now, I didn't know what I was doing at that age, but it was amazing. And then it was like a year or so later, like when I was like 6 or 7, our parents took us to Silver Lake Video, and we rented a Nintendo. Because back in the 90s, you could rent video game systems. So we rented a video game system, and I got to play it, and I loved it. And I don't know if our parents were testing us, but the following year we got a Nintendo. Like, each of us had a Nintendo in our own room. Oh, and I just remember playing it, loving it, really getting into playing Nintendo. Now, at the time, Super Nintendo was out, Sega Genesis was out, so there would be times when we would go to, I remember going to my friend's, Johnny. His brother had a Super Nintendo, so I was playing Super Nintendo, and I got to play Mario Kart for the first time, which I wasn't a big fan of, but I got to play Primal Rage. Primal Rage to me is a very underrated fighting game where you fight as like dinosaurs and primates and fart and burp at each other. It's fucking awesome. I also remember at the time I was really big into superheroes. I still am. Love superheroes. Being able to go, and we went over to my dad's coworker's house, and he had kids. And there's those traditional spoiled little brats that get everything they fucking want, and they had a whole bin full of Sega Genesis games. And they're like, oh, you can play it, we really don't care about the Genesis too much anymore, because we're going to go play with, they had, I think it was either a TurboGrafx or they had a Jaguar. This is about 93, 94. So, at the time, I was still playing Nintendo at my house. And I'm going to get back to some of my memories with the Nintendo early on. But I was there, and I started playing, and I played Street Fighter for the first time. And that game is fucking awesome. Street Fighter 2 Turbo. X-Men. I played X-Men on the Sega Genesis, which I still consider is one of the best X-Men games. I played a Power Rangers game. Vector Man, which I love Vector Man. I played Earthworm Jim. I really got into it, but going back, when I got the Nintendo, because the Super Nintendo was out and doing really well at the time, we went to a pawn shop. In this pawn shop, you could get Nintendo games for $5 a piece. So we went there. I remember each of us got $100 to spend on video games. So, well, you could spend on anything, but I chose to do video games. Me and my sisters were really big into video games. So you had my sister Chantel was really into platformers. She played like the Mario games, and she learned all the secrets. Showed me some of the secrets. My other sister Charity was really into like puzzle games. So your Dr. Mario, your Yoshi, your Tetris, all that. I got a little bit of everything because for some reason I was drawn to this Nintendo. Super drawn to this Nintendo, and I just got a bunch of games. Of course, I picked up Zelda. Mario 1 I didn't pick up because my sister had it. I picked up Mario 2, Mario 3. I had Godzilla. I had every LGN game you could think of, which I wish I wouldn't have got those back in the day. I got Final Fantasy, which confused me when I was a kid, so I didn't play it much. I got A Boy and His Blob. I got this game Monster Party, which is a really cool game. And I got Gauntlet. Among like games like 8 Eyes, I had Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, which is my favorite Castlevania game. I had Ninja Turtles 1, Ninja Turtles 2. I had a lot of games. And at that time, everybody was talking about Nintendo, whether it be regular Nintendo or Super Nintendo. And there would be people that you would go over to a friend's house and they'd have a Nintendo. Like, I had a friend of mine. I found out I wasn't really big into having friends, but I would associate with certain people that had video games, so I could go over there and play some games. I know it sounds kind of snotty, but you know, I'm kind of socially awkward, so I did the YouTube thing. But when I had my Nintendo, so I had a top-loader Nintendo. For those of you that don't know, the original Nintendo, you could either go like this and put them in, or at the top, you could have a top-loader. But I didn't know this when I was a kid. It played Japanese games too, so it was like having a Famicom, but I didn't know that. So what I did was Gauntlet. For some weird reason, Gauntlet was the first game that I put into that Nintendo. Because on the cover, I think I have it. Let me show you. Okay. This is not my original copy. I re-got this recently. Okay. Look at that cover. And on the cover, there's an elf ranger, who's the worst character in the game. There is a She-Ra type chick. There's a wizard, and I always called him He-Man because it reminded me of He-Man. He-Man or Conan, whatever. Gauntlet was a game that I kept every password. I had this spiral notebook, and I would play it all the time. I played it for 6 months straight. I got to level 200 when I was a kid, and I loved it. Gauntlet was a game that I could just go in, and I would play it religiously. Even when I was a kid, I beat Zelda, but I don't remember how I beat Zelda. But as a kid, I was just absorbing these Nintendo games. Just like... And when I found out I got a Nightmare on Elm Street video game when I was a little older, when I was like 10. I had a Friday the 13th game. I would just like play like these random games. And when we would I would rent video games, and when we would go to the stores, like, I would watch video game shows. Like, I watched Super Mario Brothers show, the Nintendo Power Kids. If you remember that, there was like you had like Captain Falcon, and you had like all these different Nintendo characters on a cartoon. I watched The Legend of Zelda, the animated series. When I was about 5 or 6, I got a Game Boy, and I played that too. We really didn't have money for a lot of batteries, so what I would do is I would plug it into the wall, and I would sit next to the wall and just go like this. And that was actually my first introduction to Zelda. Not Zelda, but Mega Man. I had Mega Man 2. I didn't get pretty far on the game, but I loved Mega Man. And then I watched the animated series when it was on TV. Kirby. I got into Kirby. I played Super Mario Land on that thing. I played Tetris all the time. I love Tetris. But who doesn't love Tetris? So, and I remember this one time I was playing Mario 3, and I got all 3 flutes, and I was playing the game like all night when I should have been sleeping. I was like in 4th grade, and I got to the final level, and I had to go to school, so I left it on. And I came back, and I beat Mario 3, but my NES overheated and broke. So what I did, not being the nice person, is I unhooked mine, put it in my older sister's room, in Charity's room, my sister, and I took hers, because we both had 2 uploaders, and I put hers in my room, because I didn't want to not play video games. I kept playing, and since 1989 or 88, I've been playing video games religiously. Now, I would say earlier I've been told that I was playing Atari, but I don't have memories of playing Atari. Like, I know that I still, for some reason, I can go in Atari game and I remember the levels exactly, because I probably played it when I was a kid. But to me, Nintendo was such a nostalgia trip. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis especially, because I grew up in the 90s and those were a big thing, and anytime it's different nowadays, because anytime I went over to somebody's house, they always had a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, or a Sega Genesis, and everybody had games. And it seemed like everybody had different games. Like being able to play like Aladdin, Lion King, Little Mermaid, so you had Disney games, and then you could play Contra, and then you could play the Mega Man games, you could play Super Mario World, or you could play Killer Instinct, or Primal Rage, or you could play Boy and His Blob, or you could play the Castlevania series, play the Zelda series, Godzilla, Terminator, wrestling games. There's like boom, boom, boom. Everything was so eclectic back then, and it was like it wasn't oversaturation, but there was more consoles. Like in the 90s, we had Sony PlayStation, the 3DO, the Sega Saturn, N64, Sega CD, the Genesis, the Master System, the regular Nintendo, the Super Nintendo. We had 3DOs. Everybody from my cousins to friends to my sister's friends, because when my sisters would go somewhere, I'd go with them, and then I'd end up playing video games. You had your Game Boys, Tiger games. We all had Tiger games, even though Tiger games are shit. It's that memory. It's those early gaming memories that you could always hook onto. The first time you played an RPG. The first time you booted up a Nintendo. The first time you turned on a Game Boy and heard that music that plays whenever any Game Boy opens or turns on. The first time you turned on that PlayStation and saw that logo, it's nostalgia. And sometimes you look at nostalgia and you think some games were amazing back then and you play them now and they're crap. But I love the games that you played them when you were a kid and they're still great today. I can think of a lot of games that I loved when I was a kid and I could still play them. Like Mario 3. Mario 3, considered the best Super Mario game ever, and I stick by that. Where's Zelda? You turn the power button on, and that song is so great. It takes you back to when you were younger, to a simpler time, when you were just a little kid, the first time ever, with that NES controller in your hand. And those are memories that can never be taken away. They always remember. So, this is my retrospective, my retro rewind on gaming memories. And on the next episode, I will give you, we'll continue, because of retro rewind. I would like to rewind the hands of time to show you the way gaming used to be.